Come and have a seat. Are you willing to donate your body, your genome, anything to science at all? That's what we're talking about here. We've got Evie. We don't know these two people yet. I know me. I'm Mikey. What's your name?
Nacho from 24 Genetics.
Say again. Nacho.
Nacho.
Yeah.
Like
and what's your name?
Laurie.
And
David.
Okay, so my name's Mikey. We've got Evie over here. I've just elephant in the room. We've just discovered that Evie is actually an identical twin.
Really? Yes, yeah.
Which, you know, is kind of like interesting. It's not so...
What's the name of your twin? What's the name of your twin?
She's called Harriet.
Yeah.
And do you wear the same clothes?
No, we were always forced to not wear our own clothes and do have our own interests. So I think we were quite, brought up as individuals, which is probably quite good.
Yeah. So I don't know how much you know about Talkaoke. It's kind of up to you to decide where you want to take this conversation. Me and Evie were just chewing the fat about this idea that she's got different allergies to her sister, identical twin sister. But somehow yeah.
Does your sister have allergies, but just different ones?
Yeah. So she's allergic to wasps, whereas I was allergic to the cold temperatures, and which is quite weird. But strange. Does it make sense? Because I guess you expect that it's always going to be the same, but it's different. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a human geneticist. I'm a bacterial geneticist. But from my understanding, that makes sense because you have a predisposition to have allergies, but which allergy is then dependent upon you.
Right. Okay.
And what your body decides. Oh, this is something that we have to fight because they think it's a bacteria or a virus, but it's actually something mundane like pollen.
Do bacteria get allergies?
Did I get that right? Bacteria have an immune system. This is where we come into things that are exciting and new, like CRISPR. Yeah. But it's not really
and I guess
exactly the same as what we have.
There's many more identical twin bacteria than there are humans as well.
Yeah, but they're not as identical as we think they are. There's a lot of diversity in bacteria.
Okay.
We tend to think that they're all cloned and all the same, but there's lots of diversity, which keeps me in a job.
Okay, so we keep that going. We got over here. We got what's your name?
Breakout.
Breakout over here. So it's Nacho. What was it again?
Laurie
and David.
Dave. Yeah, I think Laurie was at the Talkaoke whenever we were at the Excel.
Yeah.
So she's an old hand at this. Yeah. And so am I, funnily enough.
Yeah.
But anyway, the identical twin thing comes up with a big question on genomics because your sister could put her genome out there or give her genome sequence away, and she would have done that for you as well. So your genome sequence would have been compromised by her potentially.
Yeah. So you might disagree on what's going to happen to your genome, but you've got no choice basically. Hang on a sec. We got a new face. I'm going to come to you in a second. What's your name first of all?
My name's Lizzie.
Lizzie. We got Nacho. We got Laurie. We got David. We got Evie, and we got Breakout on the breakout cable. I mean, we're kind of talking about. We just discovered that Evie is an identical twin, but markedly different in many ways to her sister. Markedly different, yeah. And we just that's where we are really, and we're just kind of chewing the fat about. It was you, wasn't it?
But then what happens if some law enforcement agency or insurance company decides that they're going to do something based on your sister's genome, and they say, "Oh, but it's exactly identical to yours, but you didn't consent to that being out there."
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's a whole bunch of questions that kind of come out when you've got an identical twin, especially one you don't agree with, is doing something, with your genome. But I mean,
Can I ask you another question? You probably get asked these questions all the time. Is there any sort of thing that your identical twin is similar to you that you thought, oh my god, that's so weird that you also do that same thing or also that same thing, and maybe that might be a genetic thing?
Does it have to be an identical twin? Could it be a close relative?
It could be, for example.
Yeah.
But anything like that?
I'm trying to think. No, I think that my automatic thing is when we're together, like we'll laugh and we'll laugh in the same way, but that's definitely behavioural, and that's just living with each other. Probably just levels of fitness, I would say. Like, I think we're probably similar build, always been the similar build, so, but that's not very exciting. I'm not like, oh, that must be genetic, that's
So you're
very,
not telepathic
quite dull.
or anything like that? Like
No.
in a kind of shining sort of way?
No, sadly not. But if it was, I would still say that's behavioural. I still don't see there's like a lot of the similarities I see. I would say
it's a learned behaviour more than an innate thing. Okay.
But then, like,
so you learn all the time on this show. Go. No.
Yeah, my mother, she was separated from his brother when his brother was just a baby.
Yeah.
They were living in different cities without knowing from each other anything, and they met like when they were 35. It is amazing that they speak in the same way.
Right.
They move their hands in the same way, and even they cannot have onion if it's not very well cooked.
Right. Yeah.
It is impossible for them. So it's something that, I mean, where is this coming from?
Yeah.
They are not twins, but where is this thing coming from?
Yeah. Okay. So there are some.
They weren't raised by the same people. They weren't raised by the same people, so it's not nurture. It's something.
Yeah.
My mother was in Madrid, and his brother was in Barcelona. It was 500 kilometers away.
Yeah.
Even speaking a different language that they never talk in 35 years.
Do they support the same football team?
I don't think so.
No, okay. Lizzie, let me bring you into this. Any thoughts, comments on?
I mean, I'm thinking, because twin studies were like the kind of, that's what they tried to do, you know, twins that are separated at birth, they're the perfect kind of, to see whether, you know, what is nature, what is nurture. But I would say that you probably don't tend to hear of the stories of the twins that are absolutely nothing alike, and you're going to hear the ones where there are these like brilliant kind of, you know, oh yeah, and they do this as well, but yeah. I would love to have a twin. I think it'd be great.
Well, I mean, maybe with these guys get a move on, maybe you will be able to create your own twin.
Oh, what, clone myself?
I mean, that's what Evie's done. It's not the same.
No, it is the same, but they're not the same genetic thing, but they'll be much younger than you, you know, so it'd be
Even
quite
better.
interesting, interesting. Well, you'd have to, you know, if you're a real scientist, you'd have about 20 of them, and then you could do experiments.
Have you ever wanted to have a third twin?
No, I'm afraid. I look quite generic anyway, so the fact that I also have a twin means that my actual facial identity is quite lost in the crowd.
Right, okay.
So no, I like the idea of being individual.
Okay.
But I disagree with the clone thing. Like the I did, like when people are like, oh, exciting to be a clone. It's like, well, you don't have any other special. Well, this from my perspective, I don't think you have more of a special connection. And again, you'd have to raise them from a child. So I think I think when people talk about clones, they're actually thinking more about a clone, but that maybe that's somehow like committed to you, or somehow like not subversive, but like subservient to you. Thank you. And that's what people think about when they think of clones, because they think of someone who has similar organs, or like so, it's like a helper of some kind. But it's just be another person. They might end up being a dickhead, you know. So it's like,
what do you do if your clone is a dickhead, or your identical twin, or a close relative? That's what we're trying to work out here. Dave, any thoughts on that? Anyway, so where are we going to go with this conversation? Do we want to talk about, like, you know, I mean, the thing we were talking about earlier, that in a way being an identical twin means that your genome is out there and it's kind of doing things that you can't control.
So I do experiments on worms, and they're effectively identical because they're inbred, you know, they're self-fertilizing hermaphrodites. So they're inbred, and we do aging studies, and you might take 100 worms, and the first worm would die after 8 days of adulthood, and the last one might be like 24 days, 3 times longer, even though they're genetically identical. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that's going to be different. I mean, there is actually a slide I'm going to present this afternoon with twin studies of longevity. If you look at high longevities, there's a correlation, close correlation, but if people die younger, there's a less of a correlation between the death of the twin compared to their other twin.
Okay, so long-lived twins live the same amount of time, but the ones that burn out quickly burn out at different times. Okay.
just a random question, but have they done any like epigenetic studies of twins yet, and sort of seen like methylation patterns and stuff like that? So the stuff that's not actually the genetic code, but the stuff that could be different. And
okay, I mean, going on from the whole twin studies thing, what about the epigenetics of twins? Has anyone got around to doing that? Nacho, any ideas?
I see in our roadmap to have epigenetics because at the end we are in the direct-to-consumer market, and epigenetics will be great in terms of money because you have to repeat it again and again.
Right. Okay.
But I still don't know how to do it.
Okay, so the epigenetic thing could be a big, the dollar signs are there. Yeah.
I imagine someone's done it. Really, we need like Google Scholar plugged into the table here so we can check up for the paper.
Well,
check out for the
laptop.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So I can have a little look if you want, but. I'm sure it's been done or had a look at. It's interesting. Yeah, my guess would be quite a lot of similarity, but yeah.
Okay, but that's a guess. It's not based on any research whatsoever. Laurie, have you got any thoughts on this? No. How does it? What about you study bacteria?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess they're also identical twins, and they live different type. Does the bacteria live shorter or longer than its sister?
Well, it all depends on the environment that it's in and how that population survives. So it survives because the population is diverse and it will react differently. So not even every cell within a bacterial population is reacting to its environment in the same way. It's responding and adapting in different ways within.
I mean, so there is this question. This, in a way, I'm going to try and encapsulate this conversation.
I mean, this one person, she has a genome, but within her body, she'll have various different permeations of that genome.
Yeah.
I mean, this was sort of clearly demonstrated early on when we looked at people and their cancer genomes, but that's been shown with various other aspects of human genomes as well. There are variations within our genomes in our body. So even though she has a twin, there's still going to be slight variations. We know from talking to her, she and her twin have different allergies. Yeah. So in those aspects, there will be differences in their sequences.
So there's this question about diversity and where it actually comes from. It comes maybe from the environment, from something else.
And is she having the same lifestyle as you have, or different? Same city, same sports and stuff, or?
Yeah, I'd say relatively similar, and we both live in London, and that was something that, again, when I was sitting on the tube on the way here, I was thinking about. With that, I was quite interested in what the stage of research is at, and like pinpointing, yes, this environment affects you in this way, or I was thinking it's about a city being polluted, London, but I know for most cases it's not as clear cut, and like the advice usually says, live outside in a nice area and do some exercise. So I'd say we're very similar, but I'd be interested if one of us moved to a cleaner city or the countryside to see like what would that happen.
I've got the data in. Some paper says depending on what tissue you look at, it's between 5 and 18% heritability in CpG island DNA methylation. So there's a bit of heritability,
what does that
but
mean?
That means that if you look at that a small amount. What bit of it means?
Any of it means. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Epigenetics, part of it is modifications to the DNA above what is on the DNA already. So that can change how the genes are expressed.
Yeah.
So the question would be, some people think that's just the environment that changes that. But this paper's looking at, if you look at twin studies, you might be able to say, well, is that just something that happens because those twins are similarly related? You might get similar methylation patterns. Because,
and what have they discovered?
Yeah, about between 5 and 15%, so a smaller percentage of them.
5 and 15% are similar?
Are similar, yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so there is a little bit of, but it doesn't explain most of it.
Right, okay, so most of it is environmental on the epigenetics.
I think it's dangerous to say that a lot of that the environment doesn't have a big. I think it does, because I think otherwise you say, oh well, I've got the gene for this, so there's nothing I can do about it. That's that. But actually, so much of it is down to the environment and what you do. I think the epigenetics almost is almost more important than the genetics. That's just you wouldn't know. Like it's like a play, isn't it? You've got to have who's speaking when, where they're, who comes on at what time. The actual letters, otherwise they don't make any sense. So I don't know. I think.
So in a way, you see the epigenetics as kind of like the stage management.
Yeah,
of
it's all the direction.
It's
the direction of the performance, and so you can have two identical scripts, but two directors will do something completely different with them.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know if you've seen.
From the practical point of view, that's amazing because at the end, genome is telling you who you are, and epigenetics is telling you how you are.
Yeah.
So, and once we are able to read this epigenetics, we will be able to tell you, okay, this month you are much better on these risks than 6 months ago.
Yeah.
And this is your action plan for being better in the future.
Yeah.
And probably most of the research will be done on twins because at the end it's the best way to understand if your sister goes to Alaska tomorrow, how methylation is going to change. That will show us a lot of things.
Yeah. Any travel plans?
Well, no, I was going to say, between the age of 19 and 21, I did grow quite a bit more than my sisters. I'm probably like a centimetre and a half taller, which is quite a lot, I think, for when you're about 19.
What led to that growth?
But it's when we went to uni, and she went to Cambridge. She was studying very hard, and I went up to Scotland and was doing lots of sport and also studying, but maybe not as hard. But then I was thinking in my mind, like, oh, maybe it's because I was, the air was fresher and I was doing lots of active things, but maybe it's just random as well. So part of me thinks that like all of this stuff is really good and thinking about your environment, but it's so easily like misused, or like people start eating goji berries just because they think that's going to change their genome.
It's a good way to sell goji berries, isn't it?
Exactly.
I mean, in the end, especially here on this table, more than the real scientists, it's all about stories, and the stories that that we can latch onto and make sense and give it a kind of. Give all of this. That's what we're really doing here. Is kind of turning the kind of more difficult, complicated science into some nice stories here on this table. Anyone else got any other stories then? Or are we going to just focus mostly on Evie being half of an identical twin set?
In the town I live in, there's triplet boys, and my daughter can tell the difference between the three of them, but very few other people can. But one of them is shorter and wears glasses, but they're identical. But there's something obviously that's influenced the way that one of the triplet has grown and developed, that he needs glasses and he's shorter. Yeah.
We've got a photographer
There's obviously
here.
there'll be a difference as well in the microbiomes between two people, whether they're genetically identical or not. And we saw in the little stage down there were a couple of talks about microbiomes and their influences, even upon our behavior, and whether it's influencing our behavior or the other way around, our behavior is influencing our microbiome, and then what we eat can influence our microbiome.
Okay, so it's not just the epigenetics, there's the microbiome as well.
A load of genomes in there with us.
Yeah.
Probably more than our own.
Does anyone know anything about microbiomes and how that affects us? I mean, won't you just be eating this? Generally, you'll have the same microbiome as. Does anyone know as an identical twin, or would it be radically different?
We don't even have the same microbiome over our lifetimes. It changes.
Yeah.
It's dynamic. Yeah.
But I just put my computer away, but I'm sure there's some twin studies on microbiome as well, and I'm sure there's some small amount of heritability there. But there's bound to be something, but I think there's going to be a lot that obviously there isn't. But it would be interesting if there was a bit.
How much does our microbiome shape us? Asking you. It's at random because I don't know if you know or not, but
I actually don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know. I think it definitely has an effect on. I think it definitely has an effect on disease and things, but whether it shapes us, but it shapes us in that it could cause obesity, so it might make a bit of a shape.
Yeah,
like that.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh no, I was just wondering. What are the current trends at the moment with microbiomes, or like how easy is it to communicate? Because the most knowledge I have about microbiomes is like as someone who reads a bit like popular science and is a fan of science and follows it but isn't trained, I just think it's really hacky. Like I have loads of people talking like, oh, buy this kombucha, like it improves, it's good for your gut biome or your gut biome or something like that. And then I just think it's just really hacky. It's like what should we be getting excited about in the science of microbiomes? Because what's got through to like I think the general public, it seems to be rubbish. But
okay.
Maybe.
That's because there are some very good studies that have been done, and there are some rubbish studies. That's
what are
the bottom line.
What do we know really?
Well, we know that there does seem to be an impact upon our mood and the way we behave based on our gut microbiome. There's some good evidence behind that. What that means, we don't entirely know yet. There's still a lot of unknowns about the microbiome. We do know that it changes, and it might be that what we eat can influence what it changes.
Yeah.
We don't believe necessarily the probiotics can do that, but
so we know it's important, but we don't really know much.
The bacteria in our gut are important as part of our bodies. They have to be there.
Okay.
So.
Okay, well, and also it affects maybe what we're going to pick up out of the cafe. Come and join in. Come and have a seat. Then you'll understand, and you can.
No, he only takes photos. He doesn't talk.
You can talk. I know you can. I've seen you do. Come on, come on.
No.
We're talking about microbiomes, and we're talking about, in a way, really what makes us, and it's not just our genes or.
Can I just say something, Mikey?
Yeah.
So, sorry.
Yeah. Well, let's just get this guy's name. What's your name?
Shiv.
Shiv, welcome. Yeah.
Right. So, for my take on it, is that there was a real excitement when people found that if you transplant microbiomes, say from a fat mouse, and put it into a mouse with no microbes, that mouse would get fat, and if you take it from a lean mouse, it must get lean. And then there was like, well, let's just look at the microbes, and they found, there's a lot of this type and a lot of that type, and that explains it. But what people found out since, it's not that simple, because there's thousands of different microbes, and even one species of microbe, between you and me might have the same species of microbe but a different strain, and that different strain might have completely different characteristics, and we don't even understand what that means. So there is something there, but actually finding out what it is hard, much harder than we thought.
Okay.
You remember I said it keeps me in a job. They're very diverse, and it keeps me in a job.
Basically, we've got like thousands of years of research to be done when it comes. Shiv, do you know anything about? You're a photographer. Do you know anything about microbiomes?
I was hoping you could explain it to me first.
Well, it's not going to be me, but it might be someone else. Who's going to do? Maybe we should get Laurie to do it.
A microbiome is all the bacteria you would collect from an environment. So we could scrape the skin, or inside your mouth, or in your gut, and it's all those bacteria. Yeah.
And it apparently has an amazing effect on you as a person. Your mood, your how fat or thin you are. All sorts of different things seem to be related. But how exactly that works, I don't think anybody, it's fair to say nobody really knows.
I was interested in what Evie said, that her identical twin has got the same build as her. So I'm assuming that what you mean is you're about the same amount of thinness or fatness.
Yeah.
So therefore, and you probably have different microbiomes, so maybe that's kind of interesting. Maybe there's much more of a genetic factor to it than we think.
Okay. I mean,
at the end, we are reducing random. So long time ago, everything was random, and then you can read the genome, and then there are a couple of things that is not random. You can read it, and it happens. And next thing, microbiome, next thing, epigenomics. So at the end, nothing will be random. It's just about computing all the information.
Yeah. I mean, do you think we'll get to a point where we completely know everything that's going on?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
But not with the technology we have now. We will be able to simulate a human being. But it's not going to be with the normal computers that we have now. But maybe with the quantum computers, we can make a whole simulation. Yeah.
Okay. That's a bold claim. With
big job.
So a simulated human being.
But it's like even interactions of one gene with another. There's just so much complexity. Where do you even begin with that? Where do you start?
So you don't think it's ever going to happen?
Quantum computing, not that I know anything about that. Maybe we need to do, but I just think biology is so. You can't build it from first principles. There just always seems to be so much elements of stuff that we don't know, and if we don't know it, then how can we simulate it? I suppose that's what I'm saying.
It was impossible to forecast the weather long time ago. Now the weather is in England it's quite easy. Let me say.
Yeah.
But right now it is possible. It is simulated. With an error, but it's simulated, and you can predict.
So, as I said, might have heard before, I worked with the C. elegans worm, right? And in the late 1960s, the idea was if we know the whole the neurons. So they worked out there's 302 neurons. So actually two have been demoted. So now it's 300 neurons.
So what are the other two?
The CAN neuron has decided it's not a neuron. It's like not a neuron anymore. But anyway, there's 300 neurons, and we know all the interconnections. And the idea was, if we could understand how a worm brain works, we can understand how a human brain works, right? And this has been going on since the 1960s. And then I was at the International Worm Meeting in Los Angeles last year, where there's like thousands of worm people, and there's a keynote speak from Cory Bargman, who's now the head of the Chan Zuckerberg Foundation, the science thing, right?
Yeah.
And she was talking about, and she's been working on these neurons for a long time, and she was saying, we understand the sensory neuron, so the neuron that senses something new. We can see what it does. But then the next neuron down, the interneuron, we don't really understand how the interneuron responds to the stimulus of the sensory neuron. So of this big nervous system, we kind of understand one set of neurons, and then on the chain, then we don't really understand how the second set of neuron really works.
So is it a case of the more I learn, the less I understand?
No, I think we're going to get there, but it's a lot harder. I kind of agree with you in one respect. We will get there, but how long is it going to be? 1,000 years. And it might be not just about the technology, but about the experimentation. You can't just do stuff by... You've got to do experiments. You've got to do perturbations. You can't just look at stuff. You can't. I mean, you could do AI on it, but that always doesn't tell you how it works. It just just predict stuff.
Yeah.
I can start with one cell. I think probably that she works with cells, maybe, or you start trying to simulate just one cell doing a single thing, and then 2 cells, and then 3 cells, and then a worm.
Okay.
I think it's just so, because I think so much of the times we think of things and even genes like being on and off, but there's such like a sliding scale. It's more of like a dimmer switch.
Yeah.
And like cells talk to each other, and essentially everything is chemistry. And you've got to model diffusion. You've got to model how is the RNA polymerase going to get to the right. There's so much that you'd have to model, and my brain is hurting.
Yeah.
Thinking about this.
Okay. What about you, Shiv? Is your brain hurting?
Very much so.
Okay. Go on.
So E. coli, which is probably the most studied cell on the planet.
What is E. coli?
It's a bacteria that everyone's heard of E. coli, even you, Mikey, I reckon.
Okay.
There you go. Yeah. It's a bacteria, and we study a version of it in the lab, and it's got 4,000 genes, and about a third of them we don't understand what they do. We've got no idea, and we've been working on this one for about 100 years.
Right.
So we've still got a long way to go. We can do it. We can do it, but it's got a long way.
What would be the sort of roadmap to getting there? If it's even something that, Nacho wants that. I guess you want it to happen, but do the rest of the table actually want this to happen? There's kind of knowledge and ability to simulate an entire human being. Is it something that you actually want? Would you want to see a computer simulation of a whole human being?
Yes, I would like that.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
Let's go around the table. Would you like it? That's it.
I don't know. Would the simulation then be like self-aware? Like, where does this stop? And then well, I think we've opened a portal here.
Even to do that?
Yeah. I'm going to say no. I'm going to be controversial. I don't want to see a simulated human.
There is no more health problems.
Okay.
We're all safe.
Okay.
But it will take maybe 1,000 years, you're right.
Would you like to see an entire simulation?
So in this simulation, would it have all the permutations to be able to be as diverse as the whole human population on Earth?
If it's a simulation, I can simulate you, or I can simulate one part of my body, or
So it's not just a simulation of what inevitably white male. It will be a simulation of every human on the planet. Okay. So
I think you'd have to be to make a personalized simulation. You'd have to have all the data from that person to make that it's personalized. So you'd have to have their genome sequence. You can have a generic person. You could have a generic person, but a generic person wouldn't work. You need to know that person. Yeah. So you go to a GP and you put in your data and okay, I'm thinking about operating on you, but first I'm going to try it on your model to see if you survive. And then you do it on the model, and then oh right, okay, I should have done that. So you do it okay, I've done it now 20 times on your model, and I've got it working, and now you've survived.
By this time the patient's dead. Okay, Chiv, do you want to say something?
Why don't you just simulate someone who you don't like, and then if it goes wrong, which it inevitably will, then it's fine. You don't feel that guilt,
Okay, so better off simulating those that you don't like.
I was just thinking, like, but if you are like, if you've got like a model, like a simulated model, surely like you'd need that one to be embodied as well for it to make any sense. Because like as soon as you do any operating, I'm imagining there's dust in the air and like there's stuff going on that's going to affect the procedure. So you can't just have it as a digital model.
Right.
Like it can't just be like uploaded onto a server. I think it would have to be a physical thing for it to make any in your sense, for it to make any sense.
I mean, we're kind of talking about the far future. I was actually going around the table to find out if people actually want this thing, and some say yeah, but Laurie, I didn't ask you. Would you want to go?
Well, that's why I started the whole tangent onto what it would be like.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You think it would be okay?
I think if it was being used for a diagnostic purpose and for research purposes, as long as we're not making, I mean, there's tons of sci-fi films about islands where they're just making fake people for harvesting for them for organs. This would be a horrible sci-fi future. We don't need that.
We're humans. We are going to do bad things with that for sure.
I mean, it kind of comes on to a question that people were talking about yesterday. Is like, are sci-fi films useful for science in terms of inspiring people and getting the debate going, or are they actually kind of detrimental because they so often kind of overlook the actual science for the hype and the kind, how they portray scientists?
The point of sci-fi films is to hold up a mirror to society and get us thinking about things. And if they don't get us thinking about the ethical implications of things and society as it is now, then there's no point to having made the sci-fi films.
So it's more
and the fact that they inspire us to advance technology and to continue to advance science is good.
Is there a particular sci-fi film you think is a good example of that?
I think Gattaca is amazing for genome sequencing. Yeah, and if you go look at the nanopore booth now, they've got a genome sequencer that's this size, and it's just like, well, the future's now. We're here now. We can take that anywhere, put it in your pocket, and just sequence.
Is it as efficient as the ones that appear in Gattaca?
It's nearly so, because within a few minutes you can get sequence data.
Yeah.
Almost there. I mean, in the film they swab a girl's lips when she's just been kissing a date to find out if he's genetically compatible. I think we're almost there.
Okay, so
gonna go. Thanks so much.
Okay, final thought, Nacho. Final thought.
Gattaca is a good example as human beings doing bad things.
Is there any example of human beings doing good things?
That's going to happen. I mean, it's already happening with genomes, that the companies are selling the genomes of their customers to other companies without telling the customer. That's already happening with some of the biggest DTC companies, and we'll do bad things. But at the same time, it will be the final solution. Right. So we'll not die because of illnesses, and that's a good thing.
Okay. I mean, is there an example for you, and apart from Gattaca, perhaps?
Well, actually, in my office near the MIT in Boston, there's a Spanish company that they make simulation of tumors, but real simulation. I mean, they take you a piece of tumor, and then they make a big one. Right. And they can make 3 different ones, so you can simulate physically how can you kill that tumor. Right. That's going on today. Right. And it's not about computers, it's just about chemicals and stuff and tissue.
Right. So they're actually growing tumors in the lab.
Yeah. For a good purpose this time.
Well,
thank you very much, guys.
Okay, where do we want to go with this conversation? Yep.
The problem with films is that a film where everything went really smoothly and everything was like, it wouldn't be a really boring film. There has to be a tension and a low point, and some evil scientist.
To kind of go a bit.
There always has, because that's the easy way to do it anyway. There's more interesting ways. There's more interesting ways to make it go wrong, but the easiest way is the evil scientists wants to take over the world, and that's kind of like but it has to have some problem. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a film; it would be a documentary or something.
Because people on the table yesterday were kind of getting annoyed about. It was actually more about the figure of the scientists and how this character is always tends to be somebody that's unhinged. Normally, they're older. They're almost always male, and it's kind of like it skews the perception of what a scientist is, and it makes what they were saying yesterday is a question of trust then, because then people don't trust the science that comes out.
Yeah, most of the villains in Hollywood films of any type have got a British accent, haven't they?
Or they're selling you diamonds. You can sell diamonds with a British accent. Yeah.
Okay, so Well, I mean, what does that mean? They haven't got your accent though, Dave, have they? Anyway, so what do we think? I mean, is it just the way films are? You have to have this kind of narrative arc. Do you watch sci-fi? No. Yeah, go on. Lizzie?
Yeah. I like sci-fi films. To be honest, I don't think scientists are portrayed that bad. I can't think of any examples, but yeah I don't know. Sci-fi is cool, and
you think
science
it's
is cool.
It's more of a
Maybe I'm just living in my own little world. Yeah, because it gets people talking, and it raises,
I mean, do you think this kind of like this sort of whole body simulation that Nacho was talking about could be a good sort of sci-fi film? It could be the basis for a new.
Could it kind of sort of like iRobot, isn't it? I suppose that kind of robot simulated human. I don't know. Best Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, though.
Hitchhiker's Guide to
that pokes fun at the scientist, essentially, which and it almost could be true. Almost.
Okay. I remember to take my towel. I'm gonna make it come. Yeah.
No, I feel like I'm quite stumped trying to think of a like especially contemporary sci-fi film in which a scientist is the hero.
What was it?
Contagion.
Yeah. Okay.
So maybe that's like an answer to it, because I was wondering whether it's kind of like a response to kind of the 50s, 60s space age kind of when we were polluting a lot of the earth, but we didn't really quite realise that yet, and like science seemed to have all the answers, and now it seems to be like a cultural swing back against it, because it's along with like nuclear power, we seem to have had like a reaction, but it's worrying, because I mean it means you have people who have a reaction against maybe experts, or a reaction against science as well.
What about a Jurassic Park, like the original? Because like it's not actually the scientist that's trying. It's the guy that wants to run the
entrepreneur, the venture capitalist,
whatever. He's the one that wants to like have this park, and the scientist is kind of reluctant to do it, but he kind of wants the funding, and you're like, okay, I'll have the funding. Go on then. That's more realistic. A bit more realistic.
But I think that's interesting, because a lot of contemporary, at least tech heroes, are entrepreneurs. They're not the programmers, they're not the scientists, they're people who built brands and visions and businesses and accumulated a lot of capital to like do that as well. And they're still the heroes, I think. So much so that I think you get, I mean, I'm sure most people here like read or heard of Bad Blood, which was a American CEO who was she kind of built her brand and her concept about genetic testing, I think it was, without actually having any of the science behind it, but it's just because people want to be the CEO, not the scientist now.
Okay, so in a way, the venture capitalist is now the hero, not the scientist.
Well, I don't know what you're making that two separate points there in a way. Yeah, I think because like. Yes, there's like this idea, it's a big thing about startups and Elon Musk and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But in terms of like Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos, that's the company.
Yeah.
She was just fraudulent, and she got into this thing where what she did? She got this like advisory board of like huge names, and she kind of like just hyped it up, and no one really understood. The problem was that no one really understood the science and just kind of trusted her on the science.
Yeah, and because the science couldn't be understood.
Yeah, because it's difficult, and we find that. I mean, I've got a startup company, and like, to be fair, the investors don't really get the science, so you could come up with anything to a certain extent.
So you kind of like, you wonder why you're bothering to do the science?
No, you've got to do the science, because if you don't do this, if the science isn't right, eventually it will come crashing down like it did eventually for that. Although in the meantime she was a billionaire, but then she's now, I don't know if she's in jail. Is she in jail? She should be in jail. But anyway.
Okay. Right, so I mean, I guess we're now sort of talking about this relationship between kind of the world of business and startups and science. And what is that relationship? Is that a healthy relationship? Could it be more healthy? Could scientists get more money?
Yes, please.
And could, I don't know. What do people think? I've got no opinions here in the middle of the table, obviously. Lizzie, are you in a startup?
No. I'm in the NHS. So it's
could it do with more venture capital, the NHS? It's obviously struggling for money. Could we have a bit more kind of like,
Well,
VC kind of, startup kind of fueling the NHS?
I think it's difficult because the NHS has got a lot of valuable data, and I think that there would be lots of companies that would want to do interesting things with that data, and those could be beneficial or they might be ridiculous. But I think that at the moment the NHS doesn't. I suppose it doesn't really know how to handle that, but there is the potential for.
So in a way, the NHS could be more.
Well, there are commercial,
entrepreneurial.
So like with I don't know, like in histopathology labs, they can now scan the slides, and you've got these digital images, but actually they could be sort of anonymizing them, sharing that, using that as like a tool, or saying to universities, we'll scan your slides for you if you pay us. But I just don't think that
the NHS could actually get a lot more commercial without really harming patient care.
Yeah, possibly. That is a very
hot potato.
Interesting issue. Yeah.
Okay. Come and join in. Person on the tablet, yes, that's you. Come and share your espresso on the. I don't mean literally share the espresso. I mean, come and drink it over here. What do other people think? Anyone else in the world have any views on the NHS? Evie, was there a point over here?
Well, I don't know, because you're saying, you could like the NHS are good at like anonymizing like genomic data and then like maybe using it for other things. But aren't you inherently recognizable by your genome? So like, can you still make it anonymous? Okay.
Or stuff that you really could anonymize. So, but obviously with a genome sequence, you could identify that person. So that's an even bigger issue. But obviously with the 100,000 Genomes project, they're kind of trying to make that data available.
Is it really possible to anonymize a genome?
But as you were saying, if they're the slices from tumors and it's histopathology, then the images from that would be really valuable for education, even in primary schools, secondary schools, universities. If they're just a blood test result, seeing those numbers, you don't need to know who it's from, but being able to see a bunch of those as real data, that would be a useful teaching tool. And it could possibly be useful for companies or researchers who are doing studies on patients who fall into these categories, and these categories especially because lots of our data is biased, as we heard yesterday from the genomic diversity. Humans are very diverse, but a lot of our data is centered on certain white populations.
Okay, so could the NHS, not just the genomic data, but there's so much data. Come and have a seat, come and get involved. Yes! Just a couple of minutes. Anyway, we're talking about, could the NHS actually use all of this data it's gathering, just masses, a whole country's worth? And
there's other, like, not genomics aside, there's loads of other stuff that they could, like, in terms of, like outbreak stuff, like tracking and what times are peak times in A&E. Like, there's so much AI that could be used of all that data. It's just, I just don't think it's an explored area yet, but I think it will be.
Huge amounts of data, unbelievable amounts of data, just being literally flushed down the toilet. Okay, Dave.
Sorry, mate.
I'm just trying to.
He was deliberately flushing data down the toilet.
No, they're not.
I suppose all that urine samples going down. No,
well, they tend to do it. It's more of a kind of sleuth.
Now, look, there's lots and lots of questions here, right? I mean, I was talking to someone who was saying it's such a shame that all these billions of pounds go into something like Uber and not much into these kind of health service stuff, And so it is a shame that we can't get masses of money in, but at the same time, to get money in, they want money back, right? So the people aren't going to invest lots of money unless they're going to get some commercial thing out of it. So that's always difficult. If you want more entrepreneurialism in the NHS, maybe you have to set up a system with internal teams within the NHS, right? Where internally they have come up with new ideas and they have to like compete for internal money and that kind of stuff. So there's entrepreneurial, but it's within the NHS ecosystem. Make people, cause I think people work. The problem with the NHS is the institution, and institutions get kind of clunky. But if you could have little group, people work better in little groups. That's why these startups kind of do well, because they're little groups of people that want to do stuff, right? So you make little groups, entrepreneurial groups within the NHS who are trying to like competing for different things and trying out different technologies, and the ones that work go well, but we still need a lot more money into it. That doesn't solve the money problem, but it makes it more entrepreneurial.
Liz is kind of nodding and looking scared at the same time. so I don't know what that means. Could you? What about this NHS person? Come and have a seat on the table and chat.
Last time I came to
okay. So basically, what we're talking about is, could the NHS be more entrepreneurial? There's like literally truckloads of data, exabytes we heard about yesterday. Exabytes of data. It's just just a huge number that I don't even know what it is, of data that are just basically just getting deleted, that could be useful in so many different ways. Could the NHS be more entrepreneurial? Lizzie works.
We don't have anywhere to put it. That's the first problem. Like we can't keep hold of it because there's nowhere for it to
stand. Because obviously, for example, a patient will come into St Mary's or Charing Cross. Those are Imperial College healthcare trusts, the medical school there. The question is, 2 years down the line, would a researcher use this anonymized data? Would you mind that your data is now being used for research by some person who's sitting in the medical school and looking through your liver function tests, looking through your blood tests, looking at your inflammatory markers, and
well, I mean, why would you mind about
no? Well, yes, you wouldn't. You shouldn't really mind. It's a bit like if you put your hand out and you say do nothing while the doctor takes blood out of you. That is consent, because obviously you've not said, oh, I don't want that. Yeah. So it's sort of that is a form of consent.
So just by walking into a hospital, you're kind of giving your consent to your data being used forevermore.
From a large teaching hospital where it's likely that people are doing research. This is the thing. If you're going to a small hospital in the middle of nowhere, it's unlikely. Well, perhaps now it's unlikely that there is a medical school attached to it. It's unlikely there's somebody doing research on it.
But I mean, we're talking about exporting this data globally and using it for all different things, teaching aids.
Well, the thing about Biobank, as I understand it, with Biobank, they originally started with a cohort of 50,000 patients, and they asked them lots of questions, and then they described something like 4,000 phenotypes. I presume these phenotypes they ask questions like, what sort of bread do you eat? Do you eat whole meat bread? Right. Because obviously that's an effect on GI cancer or something like that. Right. So I thought 4,000 phenotypes, how can you deal with 4,000 phenotypes? And I read the paper and I thought, well, it must be because they're asking health questions and each person's a different phenotype because of that.
Okay.
So but they are expanding Biobank now to 500,000 patients, presumably. Yeah. But are they doing whole genome sequencing?
And I'm going to say, Vinny, let me just explain to we were talking about the relationship between entrepreneurs and scientists, but now we're kind of, because Lizzie works for the NHS, we're sort of trying to say, could the NHS actually be a bit more like a startup? You know, where that data is used a bit more, you know, there's so many ways of like potentially making money out of all this data that comes out of the NHS. It could be blood tests, it could be histograms, it could be anything.
Practice will have all the blood results of all of its patients on an electronic patient record. Say you've got a large GP practice of about 8,000 or 9,000 patients. That could be clinically valuable to a researcher.
That could be gold dust. Yeah.
That could be gold dust because you've got longitudinal study from the day that the person was born. He came to that. They'll have a record of all of his details, whether he had whooping cough as a child, whether he had chickenpox as a child, what his inflammatory markers were, what his blood tests were. They will have routine yearly blood tests, and the patient would have come in every 6 months or something and given some symptoms, and those symptoms were useful.
Okay, yeah. So do we think, now that we've got Brexit and everything's on the table, do you know what I mean? If the NHS said, right, we're gonna sell all GP data to the American company for no, but it'll be like a transformative. No, but it'd be for a transformative figure, like $300 billion or something, and that would that much that would would keep. Would that be a deal?
Brexit's costing basically.
Well, okay, make it $1 trillion, $1 trillion, the whole lot for $1 trillion. What would that do?
Trident with it. They just buy Trident with it and it'd be gone.
Okay.
What you could do.
Okay, so I've got a new face at the table. So, hang on. Tell us your name first.
Oh, Jamal. I was on here yesterday.
Yes, I know. I'm just more for the benefit of everyone else. We've got Lizzie, we've got Vinny, we've got Laurie, we've got David, and we've got Evie.
You're really good with names, by the way. I was surprised. Well, I think that as long as it's democratic, that everyone gets a share in the money, because consultants get paid far too much. I mean, it's always going to be heads of departments or consultants or professors who. Why should that be? So I have an ethical kind of problem with that. I mean, I think.
So you think actually the money could be a lot more
to the workforce? Yeah.
Okay.
You won't like that, will you?
Okay, so if we did sell the NHS's entire data bank,
I'd be earning 3 times my salary. So, private was
anyway, let's bring in Evie on this one. We're talking about selling the entire NHS data bank for $1 trillion. Pounds, something like that. It doesn't really matter. Yeah.
But maybe we need to. Interesting that you brought that point up, because maybe we need to also harness we've been talking, I think, earlier to some primary care specialists, and they were saying that a lot of their work, especially when they're working alongside doing genetics research, is that they are the ones who see the patient every day, who've got long-term illnesses, or and they were saying, a lot of information from them gets lost because they're the ones who actually pick up all this information and know how it interacts with patients who are taking drugs at the same time, and how that affects when they're going to get tested.
Never happy. GPs are
That's true. That is true. Yes.
Sorry.
Okay, let's get final thought from this. Let's get a final thought from.
I think it's something we need. The problem is, even if we did do the deal, it'll be like, okay, right, where's that data gone to? Like you say, it might be hard to put it together, but hey.
Yeah. Okay, so I mean, it'll be interesting how that data gets delivered. Okay, so basically what Jamal's saying is, even if they had $1 trillion, a GP still wouldn't be happy, because GPs, just by their nature, something about their way they work, they're never happy.
Is that just me, or do you think?
For GPs, you must feel sorry for them, because they would have. Those poor chaps, because they would have wanted to become surgeons or work in a hospital, but unfortunately they failed their exams. And
is that how someone becomes a GP?
Well, no, it's a bit like teaching. I'm not. If you get I'm just saying that
there are GPs
if you get a first-class degree in physics or something, it's highly unlikely you're going to become a physics teacher. When I did physics, as a first degree. Yeah. And then all my friends who got third-class degrees, you can't do anything with a third-class degree, so you become a teacher, because obviously that enables you to teach.
Okay. Lizzie?
I've got a first-class degree in chemistry, and I was a chemistry teacher for a little while. However, I'm just teaching is an incredibly difficult job, and I have huge respect for the teachers.
Thought from you before you go.
And this is going to be my final thought. I've got to go as well.
Okay. Hang on a sec. We need to get some.
Big respect for teachers.
I want to get a better final thought from you, and let's get a final thought from Laurie.
I don't have a final thought.
I mean,
we all need more funding.
We all need more money. Okay.
Yeah.
What's the way to make it happen? Is it selling the data to get the funding?
No, there is a lot of money in the upper tier.
Right.
And they need to release it.
So the money's there. It just
the money's there. It's just being hoarded by the dragons of the world, and they need to release it to the rest of us.
As William Gibson.
Hordes and hordes of money, and it's needed. It's needed by the rest of the world.
As William Gibson said, the future is here. It's just not evenly distributed. Maybe it's the same with the money as well. Okay. Final thought.
Yeah, big respect to teachers, big respect to nurses. I do agree that our nurses deserve a lot more money than they get, and they work incredibly hard, as do teachers, as do quite a lot of people, to be honest.
Okay, so in a way it's the same thing, is that actually the money is there, but we're not, and maybe the credit as well is not evenly distributed.
Yeah, but potentially. I don't know. I don't know. This is too big for me.
Yeah, food for thought for the next session. Thanks very much. It looks like this is coming to a natural end, and Jamal and Vinny are doing their own Talkaoke session. So let's just get final thoughts. Final thought.
Final thoughts. There was so much to unpack from there. I've really been thrown by the GP teacher comment. I think it's a cultural expectation in many ways. I used to think that the argument should be that teachers should get the same respect as doctors because doctors are thought of and GPs are thought of as very highly, whereas teachers are often joked about. But it sounds like in the medical circles, GPs are joked about in the same way. Okay. So I'm at a loss.
Okay, so there's a bit too much of a hierarchy going on here, Vinny. We're actually closing down this session, but have you got a final thought?
I was here for about 4 hours.
Have you got a final thought? Is there too much of a hierarchy when it comes to all these different roles and responsibilities? Should we be more kind of interchangeable?
Yes, of course. I used to get told off when I worked as a surgeon because I used to mop the floor, and I used to go to the ward and collect the patient because the porter was so busy, and we were on a busy schedule, and I have to lose the patient off the list if I didn't go. And I got told off by the hospital management that I wasn't insured. Can you believe this? I'm a surgeon. I wasn't insured as a porter to actually go down and collect the patient myself, wheel the patient myself.
Was it really about that, or was it about kind of intervening in the hierarchy?
Well, the hierarchy. But as a medical student, I worked as a hospital porter, so it's interesting. As a medical student, I could do the job, but as a trained surgeon, I was not allowed to do the job.
Right. Okay.
That'd be quite I think it would be quite a nice thing to have your surgeon to come and collect you, and it's quite like you suddenly have a relationship with a very.
I was waiting so long, and there was the porters were just not turning up to bring the next patient up. So look, I'll go down myself and collect this patient. It's only next door on the ward, and I got a message a few days later saying we hear you've been doing this, and also mopping the floor. That's somebody else's job.
Okay, so interesting. So it can work in different ways. Jamal, final thought on this one?
I think that's an interesting comment, Iched, but I mean, being serious, I think the issue of hierarchy, it's and all, we have it in research, we have genetics and clinical medicine, and it's, thank you.
Yeah.
That's it. I've got to catch him, actually.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess I'll take that half final thought as the final thought, and I guess it looks like we're going to leave it there. And thanks to Rick on camera. We're going to have another little break.